The evening sun painted the little frontier town of Red Creek in shades of gold. Horses stood tied outside the wooden saloon while ranchers and travelers enjoyed supper and music after a long day's work. Grace Carter, a young widow who owned a struggling ranch outside town, entered to buy supplies from the merchant next door. She carried herself with quiet confidence despite the hardships life had placed upon her. Inside the saloon, laughter suddenly faded. 3 rough cattle thieves blocked her path. Their leader tipped his hat with a cruel grin. "Dance with me," he demanded. Grace looked him calmly in the eyes. "My answer is no." The room grew silent. Everyone hoped the outlaw would simply laugh and walk away. Instead, anger twisted across his face. Without warning, he pulled his revolver. A single shot echoed through the building. Grace cried out as the bullet struck her shoulder, sending her crashing against a wooden table. People screamed. No one moved. No one dared. At the far end of the room sat a tall stranger dressed in a weathered black coat. He had spoken to no one since arriving that morning. Slowly, the silent gunslinger stood. His boots crossed the wooden floor with steady confidence. Without saying a word, he locked the front door. Then he walked to the second entrance and locked it as well. The frightened crowd stared. One outlaw laughed. "Planning to die with us?" The stranger finally spoke. His voice was calm. "No." His hand rested on the grip of his revolver. "No one leaves until justice is done." The room held its breath. The wounded Grace struggled to sit. The stranger knelt beside her. "It's only your shoulder," he said softly after examining the wound. "Stay awake." She studied his face. He looked tired, carrying years of sadness in his eyes. "What is your name?" she whispered. "Elias." Nothing more. The sheriff cautiously entered through the back entrance with 2 deputies. The outlaws reached for their weapons. Elias stepped between them and the frightened townspeople. His calm presence alone made everyone hesitate. The sheriff ordered the criminals to surrender. One outlaw tried to escape through a window. Elias moved faster than anyone expected. With one precise shot, he shattered the lantern hanging above the window. Glass rained onto the floor. The outlaw froze. Without another fight, all 3 men surrendered. As deputies carried them away, the town doctor bandaged Grace's shoulder. Outside, rain began falling across the dusty streets. Grace thanked Elias. "You saved everyone. I only stopped more shooting. You could have ridden away." "I've ridden away enough." Those words carried a weight she did not understand. Since Grace could not drive her wagon home alone, Elias silently climbed onto the driver's seat. Neither spoke much during the long ride. The rain softened the prairie. Lightning flashed beyond distant mountains. When they reached her ranch, Grace smiled gently. "I suppose I owe you supper." For the first time, Elias almost smiled. "I suppose you do." Grace's ranch had seen better days. Broken fences stretched across rolling fields. The barn roof leaked whenever storms arrived. Only a few cattle remained. The next morning Elias quietly repaired a section of fence before Grace even awoke. She found him working beside the horses. "You didn't have to." "I know. But you did." He nodded once. They spent the following days repairing the ranch together. Grace cooked simple meals over the stove while Elias fixed gates, stacked firewood, and mended the barn roof. Little by little, laughter returned. One afternoon they rode horseback beside the river checking cattle. Birds circled overhead. Wildflowers danced in the wind. Grace finally asked the question she had carried for days. "What made you become a gunslinger?" Elias remained silent for several moments. It wasn't a choice. She respected his silence. That evening they sat beside a campfire beneath countless stars. The crackling flames warmed the cool night. Grace poured coffee. "My husband died 3 winters ago. I'm sorry. People think time heals everything. It doesn't." She looked at him with gentle understanding. "You know that from experience." He quietly stared into the fire. Neither needed more words. Before heading inside, Grace reached out. Their hands touched only for a second. It was a small moment. But both felt something begin to change. Days turned into weeks. Neighbors noticed new life returning to Grace's ranch. Children laughed when Elias repaired their wagon wheels. Older ranchers respected his honesty. One evening a heavy thunderstorm rolled across the valley. Rain hammered against the cabin roof. Grace placed another log on the fire. "Elias, what happened?" For a long moment only thunder answered. Finally he spoke. "I once had a wife." Grace listened quietly. "A gang came looking for me." His voice almost broke. "They couldn't find me. So they hurt her instead." Silence filled the room. "I never forgave myself." Grace gently rested her hand over his. "You kept carrying that pain. I thought I deserved it." "No one deserves a lifetime of sorrow." Tears filled her eyes. "I blamed myself for my husband's death too." The fire crackled softly. Two lonely souls sat together, finally understood. Without thinking, Elias gently embraced her. She rested her head against his shoulder. Neither spoke. The storm slowly passed. Outside, the clouds opened to reveal a sky full of stars. For the first time in years, hope quietly entered both their hearts. A week later, trouble returned. The captured outlaws escaped from jail. They rode straight toward Grace's ranch seeking revenge. Smoke appeared on the horizon. "They're coming," Elias said. Grace refused to hide. "This is my home." The outlaws arrived at sunset. They set fire to the old barn. Flames climbed into the evening sky. Terrified horses kicked against their stalls. Grace ran forward despite her injured shoulder. "The horses." Elias grabbed her arm. "It's dangerous. They'll burn." Together they raced into the smoke. Elias cut the ropes while Grace calmed the frightened animals. One by one, the horses escaped. Outside, the sheriff and nearby ranchers finally arrived after seeing the smoke. The outlaws tried to flee. This time the whole town stood together. No one remained silent. The criminals surrendered without another shot. As rain began falling, it helped extinguish the burning barn. Grace looked at the blackened wood. "We lost the barn." Elias shook his head. "No." He smiled warmly. "We saved what mattered." Grace realized he was not speaking about horses. He was speaking about people. And about the life they had begun building together. The entire town gathered weeks later to rebuild Grace's ranch. Neighbors raised new walls. Children carried boards. Women prepared warm meals. Even the church bell rang with joy. Hope had replaced fear. Grace watched the busy ranch with tears of gratitude. "You've changed this town," she told Elias. He smiled. "No. You did." She laughed softly. "We both did." As the sun slowly disappeared behind distant mountains, Elias walked with Grace across the peaceful prairie. Golden light covered the fields. The wind gently moved the tall grass. He finally stopped walking. "I've spent years running from yesterday." Grace waited quietly. "But every road led me here." He carefully took both her hands. "If you'll have me, I'd like to stay." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I prayed for courage." She smiled through happy tears. God sent me a quiet gunslinger instead." Elias laughed for the first time. He gently kissed her beneath the glowing sunset. The church bell echoed across the valley. Nearby ranchers cheered. Children clapped happily. The prairie breeze carried away the pain of the past.